welcome to another DIAS Virtual U.S. election briefing. I'm joined today by DIAS Senior Fellow Sten Rynning, who is also Vice Dean and Professor of International Security. He's an expert on NATO and defence issues. Sten, how are we doing today?
Doing great. How are you?
Good. Have you had time for the election result to settle in yet? Are we going to actually see a Biden administration starting in January 2020, or is Trump going to keep his tantrums up?
I think there is no question that we will see a Biden presidency on January 20th, and the transition will happen. I think what President Trump is planning is his post-presidential career prospects and how he will make a career for himself as a part-time businessman, part-time politician, part-time stoker of public rage. And once he clarifies his thinking, we'll get to the transition.
Well, speaking about that transition, because in these briefings, we spoke with Biden advisors who said that if Biden was to come to power, we'd start to see a reset in US foreign policy, probably harking back to more of an Obama line of thinking. And explicitly, they stated that we'd see a reset in the US approach to NATO. Could you explain to us what that reset might entail for a Biden administration?
So I think it will be like Obama, President Obama, in the sense that he came in on the heels of the W. Bush presidency and the wars on terror and a war in Iraq that had consumed all the oxygen in the alliance. And his reset in that respect was to re-establish a positive, engaging dialogue with the allies to shape a common destiny. But it ran kind of sour for President Obama, and he didn't end on a good note from an alliance perspective. He was disappointed with the allies in Libya and elsewhere, and they were perhaps a bit disappointed with his leadership on some of the key issues. And so I think in that respect, a Biden presidency, the Biden presidency, when we get to it soon, will do a reset, but also do a reset in the sense that it will be more anchored into strategic focal points than what happened under President Obama. So it wouldn't be sort of the atmospherics and the sort of the good relations are back. It will be good relations for a purpose. And I think that purpose will be how European and North American allies, Canada and the United States, in unison can address Russia and China. I think those are the two big issues, and they will be the strategic focal points for a reset.
So you think we're going to see a return back to the big issues of global politics, to this great power politics focus?
I think without a doubt. And I think one of the things that the Trump administration did contribute, for better or worse, but it certainly did, is a focus on great power competition. It was not really within President Obama's reach to put that on the agenda. He did at the end, perhaps with Russia after Crimea in 2014. He tried with China, but at that point, his presidency had spent its capital on Afghanistan, the Afghan surge, and he hadn't been able to sort of wrestle his way out of that entirely. And the Trump presidency has very clearly said that was inadequate, and what the United States needs is a security and defense approach that does not get stuck in quagmires in the Middle East and is focused on what these great powers, China in particular, it has been a particular priority of the Trump administration, but also Russia. And I think President Biden will maintain that focus. There will be continuity in that sense, but there will be change insofar as President Biden will do much more to get the allies and partners on board for those two focal points.
I'm just trying to think about what the strategic choke points might look in that evolved focus. Are we going to talk about how there's great power competition in the Arctic, something that was very much a national security concern for President Trump, whereas for President Obama, it was more of a climate security concern. Will we see more of a focus perhaps on the African continent as well, where there is an increasing almost Cold War-esque great power rivalry in certain countries? Are these the sort of places we're likely to see more US focus?
So let me answer that a bit indirectly. So I think the key issue will be to re-establish a common alliance understanding of the damage these two countries can do to the international order and the Western sense of security interests. And Russia as a spoiler, I think there's no question that the idea is to have a preponderance of power to keep Russia in its place so it doesn't do damage. But the allies haven't figured out how to do a political dialogue with Russia on that. They're not talking, and perhaps they should start talking. With China, it's about nailing what type of threat is this. It's very diverse. It's very horizontal in its threat, or in its challenge rather. It covers all kinds of issues, and creating a common understanding of what that is will be absolutely key. And one of the things the Europeans will be looking out for is, will Biden go with the Trump line of China is a threat, period? Or will he seek to strike deals with China in some domains like climate or perhaps development? And as he strikes deals with China, what does that mean for the sense of whether the US sees China as a threat or as an opportunity or as a challenge? So they will have to conceptually come together on what does this very broad, diverse, horizontally pluralistic China mean for us? And once they do that, I think we'll see that, yes, there will be an upgraded engagement in the Arctic, as in Africa. And we know that China is very present in Africa. And one of the intriguing things, I think, is with the COVID-19 vaccines being just over the horizon, one of the things is that the West will have to be aware of is China might weaponize these vaccines and offer them to African countries on political terms. And what the West will have to be aware of and come up with an answer to is, how do they manage that political fallout from COVID-19 and China's engagement in Africa? What is their response to that? But again, if they don't settle on what China is and how they can, what in essence it means for the West, they will struggle to come up with answers.
So we're predicting here a much more nuanced approach to China, at least when it comes to a strategic kind of communications output here. Big cooperation on climate change and global issues, but still those rivalries and tensions when it comes down to individual regions and individual states.
Yes, but I expect that subtlety that comes out of that to be anchored in a common understanding of China as a systemic rival. So something that is not a natural fit for a liberal world order. And I think we've seen with Xi Jinping revising the constitution to give him unlimited power, if he can pull that off. China exploring a lot of soft power tools to present its own system of government as superior to Western systems of government in the COVID-19 context. I think all of that amounts to a type of ideological confrontation that will pull the allies together in a sense of, this is systemic and this is certainly a rivalry. And if we do business with China in climate, we should keep in mind that it's a systemic rival with whom we're cooperating. Sort of like they were able to cooperate with the Soviet Union on some issues, but there was a fair, clear understanding that we're not going to converge on liberal governments anytime soon.
So these are newer issues, and there's going to have to be new thinking and new ideas about what some scholars are calling a Cold War 2.0. But let's go back and focus on what we can now say are old issues that Biden's going to have to deal with, and drill down into Afghanistan, which of course I know you're an expert on. So when it comes down to Afghanistan, are we going to see Biden keeping some level of continuity with President Trump, who the Taliban was very, very fond of?
So that's an excellent question. You know, that there is the prospect that President Trump will pull out all troops before Christmas as a final farewell of his presidency. And if that happens, all allies will be leaving Afghanistan. The allies are there, not least also to maintain their relationship to the United States, and they couldn't secure their own troops in Afghanistan without the US presence. So when the US draws down, the allies draw down. If the US leaves, all allies leave. And I think President Biden will be as focused as the Trump administration was on not getting involved in more wars in the Middle East, not ramping up on its engagement in existing wars, and freeing up resources for the two key focal points, Russia and China. And from an analytical point of view, whatever happens in Afghanistan, if it doesn't do damage to us, people will increasingly not care. It sounds cynical, and I'm sorry it is that way, but I think just that is just the way it is now after 2 decades. Almost next year it will be 2 decades of war engagement, crisis management with a definite edge in Afghanistan.
So we might see a bit of a silent, slow fizzle to the end of what has been America's longest ever war, where yes, Biden seeks to get this off his plate.
He needs to get it off his plate, and hopefully, and I think all allies will be entirely eye to eye on this, supporting a peace process, offering political and development assistance will be, I think, unproblematic for everyone, and they would be willing to do that because they do care about Afghanistan's future, but they don't want it to be a military issue. I think it's entirely right, and it's long overdue that the peace process, whatever you want to call it, some say it will not be peace, it's about power grabbing and so on, but at least that political dialogue in Afghanistan, that it gets off the ground. The Taliban needs to be part of the future government system of governance in Afghanistan, and hopefully that process can live on. It will be difficult and it will be drawn out, but hopefully it will not crash and wreck the country.
So if Afghanistan isn't going to be so much of an issue or a big ticket item for the Biden administration on day one, what are going to be those first issues that Biden, his Secretary of Defense and Secretary of State are going to really focus on in those first few days?
I think they will try to do this network 2.0. The international network that will work with and support US ambitions, a type of liberal world order, that the one that began in 1945, except that this is 2.0. It is adapted to a post-Cold War era that's way beyond the Cold War, and that's beyond the war on terror, and it's made for it's a new beginning. It's a new dawn for the liberal world order. So they will tend to their allies, tend to their partners, and make clear to them that this is not a free lunch, that their investment in Russia and China policy will be critically important.
Sten, thank you so much. I've just seen a tweet from President Trump that says he won the election, so we've got a rocky road ahead, but I look forward to seeing on January 20th, 2021, the Biden administration coming to power. Thank you.
Thank you, James.